Behind the bars, how inmates manipulate the outside world. The guards at Smith State Prison thought the late-night shift would be quiet, but everything changed when a routine check turned into a shocking discovery. A correctional officer opened the door of cell 214 and froze. Inside, an inmate was sitting calmly on his bunk, staring at a tiny phone screen glowing under the blanket. But this wasn't the surprising part. What made the guards step back in fear was the live video call on the phone. On the screen, a man outside the prison was holding a woman at gunpoint, waiting for instructions, and the inmate was the one giving the orders. "Do it now," the inmate whispered. "She doesn't listen again." The guard didn't move. He knew exactly who this inmate was. His name was Michael "Red" Williams, one of the most dangerous inmates in Georgia. Even more frightening, Red had already built a reputation for controlling people outside the prison. He had ordered robberies, drug deals, and violent attacks, all while locked behind steel doors. The guard reached for his radio, his hands shaking. But before he could speak, Red lifted his head slowly and said, "Close that door. You don't want to make this worse." The guard stepped back, unsure if he should run, shout, or freeze. Behind him, another alarm echoed down the hallway, signaling that trouble was building somewhere else in the prison. For a moment, it felt like the entire place was under Red's control, both inside and outside. Then, suddenly, the call on the phone ended. The screen went dark, and Red smiled. This was the moment that later shocked investigators, the moment they realized how deep his influence truly ran. What they discovered next would shake the entire prison system. But before this night, before anyone understood how powerful he had become, Red was just another inmate doing time for armed robbery. His rise didn't happen overnight. It started with something small, something so simple that nobody noticed it at first. Years earlier, when Red first entered the prison system, he kept to himself. He wasn't part of a gang, he didn't cause trouble, and he didn't look like someone who wanted power. But Red watched everything. He studied how the prison worked, who the guards talked to, which inmates could get what items, and how communication moved through the cell blocks. He learned which officers were strict and which ones could be pressured or tricked. And slowly, he began building connections. It started with letters. Red wrote messages hidden under innocent words, sending them through other inmates to people outside the prison. These letters told others what to do, who to meet, what to sell, who to threaten. The outside world had no idea they were following orders from someone behind bars. Then, the phones came. Smuggled cell phones were common in many US prisons, but Red used his differently. He didn't waste time on calls with friends or family. He used his phone like a tool. He built a small network. He found people who needed money and offered them jobs. He found people who were scared and offered protection. With every order he sent, his influence grew. Inside the prison, Red built another kind of power: fear. Inmates who disobeyed him were threatened and sometimes even stabbed. Guards who got in his way were reported, exposed, or blackmailed. He knew secrets about almost everyone, and secrets were stronger than fists. By the time the prison realized what was happening, Red had already created a system where one message from his cell could start a robbery 200 miles away. He didn't need freedom. He didn't even need privacy. He used the chaos of the prison to hide his operations. And on the night when the guard found him giving orders through the video call, Red knew something bigger was coming. He could feel the tension in the prison. Another gang was planning an attack, and the officers had no idea what was about to happen. As the guards stood outside Red's cell, trying to understand what he had just seen, another loud noise shook the building. This time, it wasn't an alarm. It was shouting, dozens of voices rising at once from the far end of the block. The guard stepped forward. Red stayed still, watching him with cold eyes. "You should go," Red said quietly. "If you don't, you won't make it out of here." Before the guard could respond, the lights flickered and went out. The entire prison dropped into darkness. For a moment, the only sound was the guard's breathing. Then, screams filled the hallway.
The riot had started, and Red was smiling again. The alarms were still echoing through the prison when the guards rushed toward cell block D, shouting orders that no one listened to. Inmates were banging on their doors, yelling, laughing, or pretending to sleep, everyone acting like they knew nothing. But deep inside that chaos, one inmate stayed calm. His name was Marcus Hale, the man the FBI believed was running a multi-state fraud ring from inside his locked cell. Just minutes earlier, a guard had discovered a tiny phone hidden inside the light fixture above Marcus's bunk, one of the few devices he hadn't already used and thrown away. But this time, the phone wasn't the problem. The real problem was the message the guard found on it. A simple text written in a strange mix of numbers and letters. The guard didn't understand it, but the prison intelligence team did. It was a code Marcus used to send orders to his people outside. Orders that led to money being stolen, accounts being hacked, and victims losing thousands. And now that message had been sent. The warden slammed his office door as he read the decoded version on his desk. Someone outside the prison had just received the instruction to move stolen money into offshore accounts. It meant Marcus's entire operation was still active, even after weeks of surveillance and monitoring. But right now, Marcus sat quietly on his bunk, staring at the door, waiting. He knew the guards would come for him, but he also knew something they didn't. The real phone, the one that mattered, was still out there in the block, moving from cell to cell like a secret weapon, and every inmate who touched it had sworn to protect it. The lockdown dragged on for hours. Guards searched cells, tore apart mattresses, and even brought in dogs. They turned the entire block upside down, but they found nothing. No phone, no wires, no coded notebook, nothing that could tie Marcus to the outside world. And that was exactly how he planned it. When the search ended, the warden walked past Marcus's cell and glared at him. Marcus simply smiled, a small, calm smile that said, "You still can't stop me." The warden hated that smile more than anything else in this prison. But Marcus didn't have long to enjoy it. That same night, a guard slipped a sealed envelope under his door. No name, no return mark, just a blank white envelope. Marcus opened it carefully, expecting another coded update from one of his outside workers.
Instead, his heart dropped. It was a photo, a picture of one of his closest outside partners being shoved into a police car, handcuffed, head down, surrounded by officers. Someone had been caught. Someone important, and that meant Marcus's entire operation was at risk. He read the message written on the back of the photo. "We know everything. It's over." For a moment, Marcus couldn't breathe. This wasn't from his people. This was from law enforcement. A warning, or a trap. If they knew everything, he would have been dragged to solitary already, so the message didn't quite make sense. That meant someone was bluffing, or someone wanted him to panic. Marcus steadied himself. He tore the photo into tiny pieces and flushed them down the toilet. He couldn't show any weakness, not in here, not ever. But deep down, fear was starting to creep in. Someone was closing in on him, and this time it wasn't just the guards or the warden. It was someone with more power, someone who knew how to hurt him from the outside. The next morning, Marcus acted normal. He ate breakfast, walked to the yard, and spoke with no one. But while standing near the fence, an inmate walking past him whispered just 2 words, without stopping. "Package arrived." Marcus knew exactly what that meant. The real phone had been moved again, this time hidden somewhere safer, somewhere even the guards wouldn't dare search. The laundry carts. That phone held everything: contacts, codes, accounts. The entire operation lived inside that device. If he lost it, everything. But reaching it wouldn't be simple. The laundry area was guarded by 2 officers and monitored by cameras. Only inmates with work assignments were allowed in. Marcus wasn't one of them. But one of his allies was, a quiet inmate named Leon who owed Marcus his life. That night, Leon managed to slip the phone into a food tray headed to Marcus's block. But just as Marcus reached through the slot to grab it, a guard unexpectedly turned the corner. Marcus froze. The tray stopped halfway. The guard stared at him suspiciously. "Why are you standing there?" the guard asked. Marcus forced a yawn. "Can't sleep." The guard eyed him, then walked away slowly. Marcus waited until the guard's footsteps disappeared, then pulled the tray in. The phone was inside. Cold, small, dangerous. He held it tightly for a moment, knowing this device could either save him or destroy him. He powered it on. The screen lit up with a message waiting for him, one sent just minutes earlier, a message that would change everything. And as Marcus opened it, the screen glowed on his face. Right at the exact moment, a shadow appeared outside his cell door. Someone was watching him. Someone who wasn't supposed to be there. The moment Agent Rivera pushed open the steel door to the abandoned storage unit, he felt the hair rise on his arms. The place was too quiet. Dust floated in the flashlight beam, landing on stacks of old boxes and broken chairs. But what grabbed his attention was the small wooden table sitting in the middle of the room. On it lay a cheap notebook, the same kind inmates used inside prisons for writing letters home.
Rivera stepped closer. The notebook wasn't dusty. Someone had been here recently, very recently. He opened it slowly, expecting random scribbles. Instead, he saw rows of dates, initials, and strange words that didn't match normal handwriting. When he flipped the page, he froze. The next page listed names of people who had been attacked, scammed, or threatened in the last 3 months, events that investigators still couldn't solve. All of the crimes happened in different cities, but all connected back to one single inmate inside a U.S. state prison. Rivera's stomach tightened. They had found the missing link. They had found how the inmate was controlling people outside. And there was even more. A final note at the bottom of the last page. Next shipment Monday. Move target to safe house. Use code window 17. Before he could read more, the sound of a door slamming across the unit. Rivera jerked around. Someone was inside the building, and they were getting closer. He turned off his flashlight and pressed himself behind a stack of boxes, holding his breath. Heavy footsteps came down the hallway, slow at first, then faster, like someone searching. A man's voice muttered, "He said the notebook should be here. He said no one else would find it." Rivera knew that voice. It belonged to a man the inmate had been manipulating for months, a man who carried out orders without question. The footsteps grew louder. Rivera tightened his grip on his radio, ready to call backup. But if he made a sound now, he'd give away his hiding spot. He waited, heartbeat pounding in his ears. The steps stopped right in front of the boxes. Then, silence. Rivera felt sweat drip down his back. The man stood on the other side of the boxes, still and waiting, like he could sense someone inside the room. Then a phone buzzed. He answered angrily in a whisper. "What do you mean the cops intercepted the package? You said everything was clean." Rivera listened carefully. A second voice came through the phone, scrambled, robotic, but still clear enough. He recognized it, the voice of the inmate calling from inside his prison cell using a smuggled phone. "We have bigger problems now," the inmate said calmly. "The FBI is close, too close. If the notebook is there, destroy it. No evidence, no trail." Rivera's eyes widened. If the man found the notebook on the table, he would destroy the only proof that connected the inmate to months of outside crime. The man walked straight toward the table. Rivera had no time to wait. He jumped from behind the boxes and tackled the man to the ground. The phone skidded across the floor. The man fought back desperately, throwing punches and trying to reach into his pocket. Rivera wrestled him down, pinning him with all his strength. "FBI, don't move," Rivera shouted. The man finally stopped struggling, breathing hard, defeated. Rivera grabbed the phone. The call was still active. "Your move," the inmate's voice said coldly on the other end. "But you know this won't change anything." Rivera steadied his voice. "It ends today." A quiet chuckle came through the phone. Then the call disconnected. Backup arrived minutes later, and the man was taken into custody. Rivera stood outside the storage unit looking up at the night sky. They had stopped one operation, but the inmates still had more people out there, still following orders. The next morning, the prison was placed on emergency lockdown. Officers swept through the inmate's cell. They found phones hidden in the ceiling, tiny written codes under his mattress, and recorded messages meant for people outside. Each message connected to a real crime that had already happened. When Rivera walked down the prison hallway to see the inmate face to face, the guards unlocked the final door and stepped aside. The inmate sat calmly at the metal table, hands cuffed, no fear in his eyes. "You think cutting my phone stops everything?" the inmate said. "I built this system to outlive me. They don't follow me because I call them, they follow because they want to."
Rivera leaned forward. "Not anymore. We broke the chain." The inmate smiled slowly. "No, Agent. You broke one chain. There are many." His confidence sent a cold shiver down Rivera's spine. But the evidence says otherwise. Without the notebook, without the codes, without the phones, the network was collapsing. Still, as Rivera walked out of the prison, he couldn't shake the feeling that the inmate wasn't lying. That somewhere outside, right now, someone was waiting for the next order that would never come. Confused, scared, or ready to act. What they would do next, no one knew. And that is the terrifying truth about power behind bars. Even when the walls close in, the influence doesn't always die with them. Many inmates lose their freedom when they enter prison, but some never lose their control.